All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Nate. I know this is the first time a lot of you have seen me in this program, first live session for BB403. So welcome to Strategic Craft Brewing Marketing class. I'm joined here by Bruce Kehe. He's from Hopworks Urban Brewery, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. But real quick, I just want to give a little bit of housekeeping. So you probably are pretty used to this system by now, but just in case, down there in your screen, you should find a chat window. And Bruce has said that he's willing and able to take questions throughout the program, throughout his presentation. So if you have any questions or any thoughts that you want to chime in with, please type that stuff in there. And this presentation is recorded, so if you need to come back to it later on in the week, the recording should be posted. Usually I think it goes up by Thursday or so. Yeah, I think that's everything I know. And of course, if you have any questions about the class in general, feel free to chime those in towards the end as well. So without further ado, I'm going to let Bruce go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll kick things off. He's got a bit of a presentation we'll go through, and then of course we'll end with Q&A for the rest of the class. So Bruce, thanks for coming.
All right, yeah, thanks so much, Nate. So welcome everybody. So again, my name is Bruce Kehe, Marketing Director for Hopworks Urban Brewery. I've been working at Hopworks for about 5 years now. The first 2 years were on a contract basis, working as a freelancer, and then the last 3 years as a full-time employee for Hopworks. So before that, I came to Hopworks. I did 2 years as a freelancer, and then before that, I worked for a public relations communications firm here in Portland, and then before that down in Los Angeles. So I came into the marketing world with a background in media relations, communications, strategic communications. So there's all sorts of ways that you get into the beer industry, I think, and so we all find our different paths. And I think if you look around our office at Hopworks, there's a variety of different majors, educational backgrounds, and that sort of thing. So you don't particularly have to worry about what your pedigree is, as long as I think you're passionate for beer, wine, spirits, whatever, and craft in general. I think is really the most important part. So just to get into a little bit of sort of overview of my job as marketing director, I think for the most part that encompasses my day-to-day deals with branding of packaging and related collateral sales, point-of-sale material, and then messaging in terms of how are we communicating the brand values for this company through a variety of platforms, whether that's social media, earned media, paid media, or through our website and other outlets that we have of communicating with the public as well. Packaging, branding, communications really are kind of the big items. But then we're still, even though Hopworks is coming up on, or we just came up on 7 years as a brew pub, and we're about 7.5 as a brewery, we still are very much in what we consider, I think, startup phase still. And so, even though, I have a great title as marketing director, I still have a lot of responsibilities, like making sure that we've got t-shirts in stock and some of those things. So, you're still doing a lot of the little things, the day-to-day things that are necessary to get young startup companies going and moving in the right direction. So
yeah, I like to think that is the joy and the pain of working for a small company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and some days when you're chained to your computer, you're like, you think to yourself, man, what I really want to do is, just get out and do something maybe a little more physical or something a little bit, more on your feet, and maybe a little less give your brain a break from time to time.
Step away from the computer.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I'm going to give you guys just a real brief overview of Hopworks, and as we go through this, I'll do my best to sort of, dive into some of these slides and talk about why each of these communication points is important for me as a marketing director in terms of how we're presenting ourselves to customers, potential customers, and also, in the world of, distributors and, the wholesale community as well. So we'll get started here if I can use this system correctly. Real quick, it's a little grainy, hard to see, but Hopworks has been using, our focus has been on this. Our mission is to produce world-class beers as sustainably as possible. And for that really is the beginning of everything that we're all about. So whether we, are looking at diversifying, some of our focus into, let's say, the world of bikes, there's still, we're talking about, identifying sustainable opportunities and that sort of thing. But we also like to say that, beer is really the prow of the ship for everything that we do. And so, we always want to make sure that, beer is somehow involved in that process. And so it's really a great summation of what we're all about. We're currently going through a process of maybe, taking that first mission statement to the next generation in terms of, we've been growing for 5 years and we've got a little bit more experience and a little bit of a better understanding of who we are. So we're currently going through a process right now of dialing in sort of that next generation of mission statement as well, and helping us identify some of the values that we will get in and talk about a little bit more.
That's an interesting point just from the beginning. I've talked about it in the beginning of this class. Some of you have seen the video already, but so you lay out all your information, you come up with a sort of theme of who you are, but nobody ever says that that's set in stone, right? You can always adjust and tweak and then change wholesale if it comes around to it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. If you've identified something and it's in your heart and it's in your soul, by all means, I would say continue to go with it, right? That becomes really your personal stamp on your company, and really that's where the person and the brand start to kind of merge into one and that sort of thing. But let's say that you're trying to get into an avenue where you're just not getting traction, that sort of thing, and you're building yourself as like, we want to be the rock and roll whiskey for Des Moines, Iowa, or something like that. And you're just not getting a lot of traction, but it turns out that you're getting a lot of interest from another sector, right? Well, don't lose your rock and roll passion, but probably find a way to kind of craft that and make it work for also, I think, the where you are picking up consumer appeal and that sort of thing. So anyways, who we are. So this is a brief overview of just exactly what Hopworks is all about. So founded on the right there, that's our founder, brewmaster, Christian Ettinger. He founded the company in 2007 in Portland, which is certainly known for a passion for craft beer. We started with, I think, about 40 employees. It's with a brew pub, and we're up to 125. We have 2 pubs now, and so continued growth over the years, and we're still growing for sure. 20 barrel, 3 vessel brew house. You see that 25% projected growth, and then our goals for 2015 are fairly aggressive for 16,000 barrels on a 12,500 from last year. So are we having any technical issues there?
Yeah, Doug asked if anybody else is freezing up. Is anybody having trouble with sound or video, or are we doing okay? All right. Cool. Thanks.
All right. So this really starts to get into the what I call the sort of the values of Hopworks, and that is where we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and find out what's that next layer aside from world-class beers as sustainably as possible. And so we very unscientifically went around the company and talked to people who have been with the company, some people in a very short period of time, and some people who have been there since day one. And we said, what does Hopworks mean to you, and who do you think we are? And by and large, these three values that you see on your screen now are what really came through. And first and foremost, and it doesn't matter, what you're dealing with, whether it's beer, cider, wine, spirits, it could be hot dogs or cheese, whatever. Quality, it's always got to be quality. That is by far the most important, I think, thing, is that if you could have great branding and great packaging, and it's like, it's super rock and roll or whatever people are clicking with, and you're feeling great about it. But if that quality isn't there, they're just not going to connect with it, right?
Sure. So you might get them in the door the first time, but they'll never come back.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to have a great looking brand and a well thought out brand. But if the beer isn't there, if the wine isn't there, go back to working on tuning in those recipes and tuning in your process so that you are there, because you're going to find that word of mouth still sells, and it sells in a big way. And so continue. If people have a great experience, whether it's the service that they received, if it's in a restaurant, or they just had a beer that was absolutely well constructed, tastes great, that sort of thing, they're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to bring it to parties, that sort of thing. So always focus on quality, I would say. And then the next two things that really came out was sustainable. And so this has been a tenet of Hopworks, again, from the early days of construction. Our owner was the strapped on the tool belt, and his father was the he was the architect. Yeah. So his dad was the architect, and they designed this building and did, in many ways, a lot of sort of bootstrap sustainability. So they're not buying a $50,000 system, but they're figuring out a way to, maybe there's a $5,000 or $10,000 solution that has good return on investment for it. And so building an energy efficient operation, a water efficient operation has always been a key component for Hopworks, both in construction and operation. And then finally, the most giving, and so this is really the third piece of that whole thing, and that's our involvement in the community. So we do a lot of charitable donations. We do community fundraisers in our pubs, and we find a lot of ways to be involved in the community. Sometimes it's a sponsorship of different events, generally like runs or bike rides, things like that, where people are getting out. Nate was at a speaker's appearance last night and that we're a supporter of and donate beer to. So through a whole variety of ways: sound mind, sound body, and sound community sort of things. And so this is really what we came up with. We actually created a secondary mark. It'll be really hard for you guys to see on these cans, but it basically says Hub Beer in the center, and around the three it says quality, community, environment. And that's really kind of what we built on from the world-class beer as sustainably as possible. The next level of that then became quality, community, environment. And what we're working on now in terms of like a refresh of our website and that sort of thing, everything is built on those three values. If we're talking about the company, I want to hit 2 out of 3 of those at a minimum, if not 3 out of those, if not all 3 out of those, when talking about Hopworks, because that's what we want people to know us for. Great news for us this year, and really a big reinforcement. It's almost a third-party validation for our efforts, especially in sustainability and community involvement, is this B Corp certification. And so this was much like fair trade certification for coffee or organic certification for our ingredients. The B Corp certification is a validation of our business practices in terms of what we're doing in the community with our employees and how we treat the environment. And I know that, is it okay? Can I give you kudos? So yeah, so Nate worked very hard for probably close to 2 years in terms of work, helping Hopworks work through that process and making this a reality for us. We're already seeing the benefits of aligning ourselves with an organization like that in terms of other B Corp certified retailers like New Seasons Market here in Portland, who tend to like to work with other B Corp companies. And it also has a high enough name ID, whereas sometimes people do not necessarily understand organic certification and what exactly that means, that sort of thing. But they're like, oh, hey, I've heard of B Corp. Like, I know you guys are good guys because I know that, Ben & Jerry's has B Corp certification, or, New Belgium Brewing has certification. So it's been a big, really big thing for us that happened for us just last month. So, and a great benefit coming out of that was the Oregon Business Journal's headline says, Hopworks Urban Brewery, first B Corp certified brewery in Pacific Northwest, which was, in my opinion, you couldn't ask for a better headline to that in terms of, if I would have written the headline myself, that's exactly what I'd want people to know, is that we're the first in the Northwest. It helps create a nice point of differentiation between your competitors in a really competitive market.
Yeah, that great earned media that you couldn't have paid thousands and thousands of dollars for is good.
And the B Corp in the B Corp group does a great job in terms of helping you promote yourself as well as helping you promote your company to other B Corp members. So it's a great organization if you're looking at sustainability as a focus for your companies. So, and then real quick, again, you've heard me mention organic has been a huge part of Hopworks since the day we've opened, in getting that that certification. Again, this is all kind of part of our brand. It's all part of it's the layers of stories that we tell about ourselves, and that is why is organic important to us, right? And obviously it really comes back to a lot of the impacts that are environmental. And so for us, it's been an important thing since day one. If you ask consumers, what they know about Hopworks, organic is going to be towards the top of that, and that's something that we've just been hammering away on for a long time. And it just really helps reinforce a lot of our ethos with consumers as well, having that USDA certification for our products. And then just real quick, talk a little bit about our core brands, but I think more importantly for this slide and the slide that's coming up after it, this is really all about where you start to get into the identity of your product. And, this is where you can create some visually interesting product on the shelf that makes consumers want to reach for it. You want to get them to say, like, that's really interesting. Like, you want to catch their eye. So for us, we're always about, I think, bold, contrasting colors, sharp lines, and trying to be, as eye-catching as possible. You always want to look cool because then consumers want to have that, like, they're like, oh yeah, I'd look pretty respectable, like holding that beer in my hand, that sort of thing. So, but again, as cool as those labels are, as eye-catching as they are, it's the liquid inside that sells all those products. If it isn't for the passionate following that consumers have for each of those beers up there, we never would have been able to afford to get them into cans in the first place, from when we were packaging them in bottles. Mm-hmm. And that really comes from just getting great tasting recipes and getting that repeat business from consumers.
Yep. So I got a question. Brian asks, do you know some of the other B Corps.
Yeah,
I
so
can think of
New Belgium, Brewery Vivant,
Mhm.
and I think from there they get kind
Smaller.
of small fast.
Yeah.
So there's
It's,
just a handful.
Bison.
Oh yeah, Bison. Yeah, so Bison out of California.
Those are
So
the three that I can remember off the top of my head as well. I think you're right. I think it's like very small brew pubs.
yeah,
Fill out the other four.
yeah,
Other three.
yeah, and there may be one international brewery as well.
Okay.
Anyways, so it's a pretty
Great company.
small group. Yeah, it's a small group of brewers, and a great group to be with for sure. So while these brands here are all very visual and distinctive and eye-catching, they also, as you can tell, they're also all part of a family. It's very easy to see the Hopworks branding through each of those and how they all sort of play together with a family. And then on our seasonals, we like to have a little bit more fun with those, but we certainly also want to continue to be even more eye-catching, more distinctive. So as you can see, art really comes to the forefront now, and the logo starts to take the secondary position in each of those. But they also, story starts to become a lot more important part of the branding behind each of those. So here in the Northwest, each of the beers that are in our seasonal offerings, so the Abominable is our winter ale, Rise Up Red is our spring offering, and then the Pig War is our summer offering. Each of those has a story, a tie to the Northwest, whether it's as simple as just the legend of the abominable snowman, the Yetis, Bigfoot sightings that are here in the Northwest. Rise Up Red, we really kind of turn it over to an inanimate object in terms of letting Mount Hood kind of be the hero compared to the other two brands, but at the same time, we have a visually beautiful can, and Mount Hood is so distinctive and such a part of sort of Oregon's identity. It tells a great story. But if you guys look on the left side of that can, really small, you'll see this little guy on a parachute riding down, and we've kind of, secretly or not so secretly, but under the radar, woven in a little bit of narrative about the legend of D.B. Cooper. And so if you were to look, if you get one of these cans, if you look in the snow on Mount Hood, we've come up with a technique with both our bottle printer and our can printer to hide an image of D.B. Cooper, like sort of inside the mountain sort of thing. So again, a little fun with Northwest story. And then Pig War is a tie back to the land where where the wheat comes from for this beer. So Pig War is a white IPA. So white is basically, we take sort of a blend of a Belgian white ale, which has wheat in it and with an IPA. So it's a wheat IPA basically. The wheat comes from a family farm on San Juan Island and in Washington. And if you're familiar with some real esoteric Northwest history, there was a standoff between the British and American forces on San Juan Island for about 10 years, known as the Pig War. And the Pig War was basically one farmer shot a pig, and then the U.S. and Great Britain basically stood staring at each other for 10 years. So anyways, fun, kind of quirky little story. We kind of took him to a more interesting visual example. Obviously, he doesn't have a huge tie to San Juan Island other than we named our pig Juan. But again, visually distinctive, tells a story, and we like to think that we're having a little bit of fun with each of those brands and those identities. And then after we finished all of those, then this year we decided to get really crazy, and we took advantage of a packaging technique available through ball cans, where we can variably print different images on the cans through the process of one canning run. So if in the course of a typical canning run, we produce about 115,000 cans, most of the time we get 115,000 cans that all look the same. And so Ball has a new process now that allows us to create all these variable images. So you can see the main image up there, we have a bike rider, but then underneath we've got a runner, we've got hiking, skiing, fishing, there's even like cornhole. And so
darts, I thought darts was a good one, yeah.
Yeah, so actually, I'll ask a question real quick. Does anybody know there's one other company that did something like this summer that was on a packaging sort of thing with some variable printing? I don't know if
Pop quiz.
Yeah.
Seeing the variable cans
from another company. Does anyone? Exactly. That's right, Luke. Yeah. So Coca-Cola. This is the exact same technique that Coca-Cola used when they printed all the names on the cans, and obviously, Coke, doing a heck of a lot more volume than Hopworks does, was able to create, probably hundreds of different names on the cans. We were able to do 12 different images on the cans, but again, those images help tell a story. So this beer we call Nonstop Hef Hop is a sessionable wheat beer, and so it is low alcohol, about 3.8%, I believe, and also a little bit lower in calorie. And so we said, this is a great beer, and then in 16-ounce cans. It's a great beer for active lifestyle people. You can really take this anywhere. You can drink it. You're not going to get, weighed down. You're not going to feel like, too tipsy, that sort of thing. So what we did is we built a whole brand around all the different things that you can, sort of where you can take these beers with you. So again, we had this cool visual identity. Like we really want to, there's a little bit in terms of the imagery, a little bit of callback to the old Peachy folders and having a little fun there. But then, also helping tell that story to remind people like, hey man, this is a great beer for, camping. This is a great beer for, after you've done your bike ride and or after you've done a run, that sort of thing. And so we released this beer in February, and it is it's really taken off. It's been really popular. But again, none of this happens without quality, and the brewery doing a great job as well in terms of really dialing in a tasty, dry hopped, lighter bodied wheat beer. So. And then this is another, I think, really successful packaging story that we've been able to tell. This is our single hop IPX series. So IPX, like India Pale Experimental. And so the original idea for this whole thing was we wanted to have this sort of textbook look and feel sort of thing and tell the story about doing single hop beers and really help educate people as to the different flavors that hops bring to their beer. Most of your beers are going to have about 3 to 5 different hops in them. And, that blend of hops is what creates some really tasty, distinctive beers. But, going to that next level, understanding sort of what flavor profiles a Cascade hop, or, in this package's case, a Fogle hop. Our current beer out there is Mount Hood hops. We basically take one hop all the way through the kettle, hop back, dry hop process, really highlighting the flavors and aromas of that particular hop. And, it's really been interesting in that so many people have come up to us at events and said, I really love this beer. Like I never really knew what different hop varieties were contributing different flavors to my beer. And so, it's like mission accomplished in terms of that's exactly what we wanted to do. Is we wanted to have our consumers like sort of have this like aha moment. On the side of the package where we describe our beers, we continue to do that on one side of the packaging, but then on the other side of the packaging, we did something a little bit different. And because we only had a single source for our hops, we wanted to make our hop growers a star of the show as well. So on each bottle, we devote a panel of copy letting the consumers know about the different hop growers that have provided hops to our beers from the Northwest. So we've had growers from the Willamette Valley as well as the Yakima Valley up in Washington, and we write up a little feature and overview for each of those beers. Again, in a way, it's a little bit of us giving back to the hop farmers who provide us with so much in terms of this amazing hop that for our beers, and then they toil away in relative obscurity. So last year, our sustainability report, we featured one of our hop growers. We continue to feature hop growers on our packaging as well. And I think, again, it's nice to help sort of show that that transparency through the process of what we do, and at the same time educating consumers in a not too snobby sort of way either. It's like drink and enjoy.
Experimental, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, each label does have to go through the TTB for approval. So, and in our case, being organic certified, we actually have to submit all of our labels to the Oregon Tilth, who's our organic certifier first, and then to the TTB. So, we've got to be on our game in terms of planning out those labels and getting them to market. Fortunately, I've been doing this for a number of years, enough to understand sort of, what sort of things are going to hitch us up and hold us up and that sort of thing. But, even after doing this for 3+ years, I still get my labels, sent back for corrections. But yeah, it definitely, each one of those with the variations, we are submitting each new label to the TTB. So much like our seasonal program where we have 3 seasonals a year, we do 3 IPXs a year. So it's pretty manageable in terms of the overall load. If we were doing 6 a year, something like that, if we're going every other month, it could probably get a little more overwhelming for sure.
One of the other things, we'll talk a little bit about this next week when we talk about running a campaign, but it's often the case, I think, Bruce, you can confirm this, but that you're going to start the process of artwork design and then get those labels off to TILF and TTB before the liquid has even started in the brew process.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the most challenging aspects of my job is writing copy for a beer I've never drank. And in terms of, I talk to our brewmaster, I talk to our brewers. I'm trying to drink beers that are of a similar style. Read a lot about, especially on the single hop program. Read a lot about hop flavors and characteristics for that single hop beer. So it really comes with just some experience and a little bit of homework in terms of being able to write that. But yeah, we're definitely designing labels and writing copy for those labels before the beers are brewed, for sure.
Yeah.
So we may have initial recipes and maybe some test batches, but not the final production recipes.
One of the other things I think about this beer, it's obviously been wildly successful in Portland, Brewvana here, but for some of the markets where craft beer isn't a bigger thing, I don't know how it is in Spain. I'm not totally familiar with the market there, but I know when I lived in Arizona, craft beer was not a thing. So you could imagine sort of training your customer base about those different hop varietals with a product like this, where you can really share, hey, you've heard us talk about the various different hops, but so you've heard us talk about these hops, but here's a chance to understand, why we picked this one for our IPA or why we picked it for our Hefeweizen, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But the interesting thing is, again, with this beer, it's really drinkable, and while there's a lot of flavor variation from each one, that malt base remains consistent for each beer. So each beer is going to be 60 IBUs and 6% ABV, and so there's also some consistency within that style for what is actually a really pleasant, strong pale ale or kind of a light IPA with those stats. And so it's regularly a go-to beer for me, and I don't know if I have too much, if I'm drawn more to certain hop varieties than others, because again, it's a well-constructed beer from the malt base before the hops ever really get into play. So you can still have a solid foundation for that as well.
Absolutely.
So you can, because some people aren't going to care about the differences between Fuggle and Mount Hood, but they're like, oh man, I like this. It's easy drinking. It tastes great, and it's what I'm looking for in a beer. So.
The only wish that I had about this project is that you could get 10 of them in a row to do a tasting.
Yeah, sometimes
more direct comparison.
It's really it's a lot of fun when we have transition months where we've got one variety coming out and a new variety coming in, because you can take those two bottles and you can drink them side by side. I've had vendors at different stores tell me that they're starting to tune in enough to the project that they get excited about those transitions as well, and they can market it to their customers the same. Yep. So sometimes in the pub we've had as many as 3 available at one time, and then we'll roll out we'll do like little special tasters for all 3 as well. And with that, thanks so much for your support and listening to me chat. And I'm gonna turn it back to you guys now, and see what you guys have to say and that sort of thing. So don't let Nate and I just chit chat up here. I'm happy to hear some of your questions.
Yeah, fire up some questions, folks.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up watching us drink these beers. This beer is actually a really interesting reminder, by the way, while you guys are coming up with your questions. So this is basically just a blank can that we got, and while we get most of these all printed from ball cans, we're doing a collaboration with Bitburger for the upcoming Craft Brewers Conference, and so we are packaging some collaboration beer up just today, and then what we'll do is we'll come back through and just put a sticker on it, that sort of thing. So okay, cool. Some questions here. How much time do we spend on social media? That's a really good question. I've always considered Hopworks social media a little bit like my baby. We started when I started, the company was 2 years old. Our Facebook page had about 3,000. Actually had 3,000 friends. The person who had started it created it as a person. So I kind of took that, migrated it over to a company page. We grew it all the way to about 17,000 or so last year when we finally hired our second person in the marketing department. So we have a communication specialist now who is handling all of our media relations and especially our social media, and has done a great job in terms of having bigger share of mind, growing growing our presence online even more so. I would say that in a given 40-hour work week, probably maybe 5 hours tops in terms of responding, commenting, coming up with new posts, that sort of thing. So it's definitely, I've always considered social media, it's a little bit like, you can't just turn on your page and then leave it alone. It's definitely it's a garden that you have to feed it, you have to tend it, and you have to really take care of it. And if you do that, though, there's a lot of rewards in terms of having direct communications with a lot of your customers.
Yeah, and the shares that they can give, the warm plug to their friends is one of the biggest boosts of social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So next question is on the Survival Stout malt beverage with coffee added. Yeah, that is definitely that is the TTD at work there for sure. If it was up to us, we would call it a coffee stout or a multi-grain coffee stout. But unfortunately, the TTD for any additive that isn't a traditional beer additive, so whether that is fruit, coffee, even barrel aging, that sort of thing, they have some very specific requirements in terms of how you post that. Now, fortunately for all of us, they just loosened up those requirements. And so it's a little bit easier to move that through the process now. We used to have to submit a formulation, a statement of process, in addition to your label and all the other documentation that they want. So they've loosened that up now, so we still have to have the label say, you know, the proper terminology, but we no longer, I believe, have to have that statement of process. So they've loosened up a little bit, which is great, and actually, you know, the TTB has come a long way in terms of being more producer friendly in terms of you know, getting labels through and approved. So, all right, I'm getting thirsty. Do you want one of these?
Let's crack them.
Which one do you want? I have one of these in my car, so.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So, cheers, everybody. All right. Let's see. Do we have LEED certification in the Northwest? No, we don't have LEED certification in the Northwest. Again, I think going back to one of the earliest things I talked about here, when they were building the building, you know, a lot of that was bootstrapped, and, you know, sort of, you know, sustainability was built in, but not necessarily through systems. And as part of that, they built a lot of the construction to LEED certification without spending the money to get LEED certified. So in the future, as we're now a little bit more mature company, if we have new construction, that's probably something we would definitely look at. But I think our ethos is a little bit more like, we'd like to find old buildings that already exist and maybe bring them back up and make them cool and modern and fun again. So, but LEED certification is definitely, you know, an option out there.
Can you talk a little bit, Bruce, about, so Hopworks makes a lot of use of some of the labels, like you've got the OTCO, Oriental,
Right.
On some of the cans. There's the organic, there's the, what's the other one, the carbon neutral, some of these tags. Can you talk a little bit about using those tags on labels and marketing materials?
Yeah, so, you know, especially when you play in the you know, in the sandbox of sustainability, there's a lot of third party certifiers you can leverage, whether you know, you're getting your organic certification, whether through your local certifier, Oregon TILF, or you use the USDA stamp. We're a carbon neutral brewery, so we offset all of our carbon offsets from cradle to gate, as we say. We offset all of our water with water credits through Bonneville Environmental Foundation. So there's all these little logos that you can collect, and after a while, the packaging on our bottles started to look like this. You know, underneath the description of our beer, there would be like 5 or 6 like little circles, and they all represented something. And we decided that it was starting to be like, you know, a little bit too much alphabet soup that wasn't really telling the story, and that's really how we came to create the you guys are never going to be able to see this, but the quality community environment mark that we came up with for our label. And we said, you know, instead of having all these different certification marks, that sort of thing, we're just going to take a step back, be a little more macro, and just say quality community environment. That's really what we're all about, and put those marks on. And then we continue with the USDA certification for organic, because that is probably one of the most widely recognized and quickest to be understood sort of thing. But at the same time, all those certifications, down to the bike-friendly business certification that we proudly display inside of our pub and on our website and in our menu, where you have a little bit more space where you can tell that story. We still tell that story because we think it's important not to just sort of talk the talk, but to have that third-party validation of what we do. Gives the consumers a little bit more confident that it's not just, you know, greenwashing.
You're not just making it up, right?
Yeah, we're not just making it up. It's not greenwashing, that sort of thing. So, cool. Yeah, great. All right, let's see here. Is our beer available in Colorado? The short answer is no. But when we look at, you know, the growth of Hopworks, you know, we look at, you know, well, what are the fertile markets for Hopworks? Where can we go? That sort of thing. And so, you know, the first place we looked was like, well, what are the biggest organic markets in the country? And so we we basically pull the list off the internet, and not surprisingly, the West Coast, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and then as you move east, you had Denver, Austin, New York, and I can't remember the other couple, but so Denver is definitely on that list, but we think there's a lot of room for growth in the Northwest still, and also we again are looking at that carbon footprint. How far out are we going to go? And if we do that, what's the most sustainable way to get our beer there? Southern California and Texas have some really interesting appeal to us because you can get to both of those markets via rail, and that's far more efficient than putting it on a truck.
Special events at the pub. How do you market them? What are you doing for CBC?
For CBC, we're doing the three. We've got the three beer releases. So we collaborated with Bitburger on this India Pale Lager. So we decided if you're gonna partner with somebody, we should both do sort of what we know best. And so obviously Bitburger makes a world-class lager, and we certainly here in the Northwest and at Hopworks have a lot of experience with hops. So we said, let's make a hoppy lager. So we did that release, and we'll release that on Wednesday of CBC, which I believe is the 15th in our pub. And then we also did a collaboration with Stone Brewing. So we, again, kind of looked at, well, what are kind of the things that we know? We do a CDA, a Cascadian Dark Ale. Stone does their Californian Dark Ale, the Sublimely Self-Righteous or Black IPA. And so we said, well, let's get together. So we made a Black IPA, CDA, what have you. And then we finished it off with, we're aging it right now on some Spanish cedar. So kind of the most known for being very aromatic, what people line their cigar boxes with and that sort of thing. So it should be a very aromatic, dark, hoppy beer from Hopworks and Stone. And then we have an experimental single hop, one of our IPXs that we partnered with Hopsteiner, who's a hop broker. And so we're doing a single hop ale for them at CBC. So we'll release those three beers in our pubs, the Bitburger Wednesday, Stone Thursday, and then the experimental hop on Friday for CBC. So, and then real quick for Laura, no, Stone has come into town and they're doing events with like everybody. So they have a lot of different events planned. Let's see here. I'll get back to the special events at the pub and just real quick, maybe knock out a few of these shorter ones. So the label artwork, we have always worked with graphic designers outside of Hopworks. So they've always been contractors. We worked with an independent designer who really helped us get off the ground and get started. Did a great job helping us sort of define those things. And then as we continued to grow, we really wanted to kind of sharpen the edges or sharpen our identity up a little bit. And so we are now working with a larger agency here in Portland that is, really coming out with, we haven't rebranded anything, but we've refreshed just about everything in terms of just keeping that look fresh, crisp, and kind of on message with what we do. And then, what form of marketing consider the most important to utilize at startup? That's a really good question.
Say the last question too. Most important grassroots or zero budget marketing campaign? Yeah.
I think social media in this day and age is probably your most cost-effective means of reaching people. But you still can't beat word of mouth and providing people with a quality experience, whether that is the liquid, or if you're also opening a restaurant or a brew pub or whatever that's going along with it. Great service, great atmosphere, that sort of thing. if you're always going through that lens of quality, people will start being your own marketing agency for you, and really help talk up your your efforts and create that. So I think word of mouth would be my number one choice, and then social media and some of those outlets would be that kind of number two, low cost entry opportunities for sure. All right. We'll go back and talk about just marketing special events at the pubs. We do everything from, just really simple beer releases. So, when Rise Up Red comes out, we keep it pretty low key and simple at the pub. We just do like a quick, simple toast. We let people know through our different communication venues and put out a press release, for the local beer blogs and that sort of thing. All the way to last year was the first year we did the Handmade Bike and Beer Festival. So we took our previous beer and bike themed event, Bike to Beer Festival, and merged it with the Oregon Handmade Bike Show. And so we came up with the Handmade Bike and Beer Festival. So now it's a 2-day handmade bike show with a beer festival. And so we've really grown events from really simple to pretty complex type things now. In terms of marketing, I think we are still sort of we don't have giant stacks of money to throw at print, any sort of real print campaign or TV or radio. So we're doing making sure again, free media. Use the event calendars in your A&E section of your newspaper. Definitely your alternative weeklies. Let them know about that through press releases and those sorts of things. And then online presence. Does your community have online event page listings, that sort of thing? And then reach out to your beer bloggers. If you've got somebody covering the craft spirits, whatever that event is, let that particular sort of trade niche media know, whether it's print or blog or podcast, wherever that media is, make sure that you're hitting all those touch points in terms of letting people know about your event. And then, if you've got the money available, I like to do a little bit of paid display advertising in the alt weeklies mostly, and then some paid placements, with some online advertising. Again, targeting the A&E section, the event section. Sometimes you can find communities that have great, like people who subscribe to like weekly event newsletters, that sort of thing as well. So, cover all those different things. And then, it never hurts to have a little bit of street teaming as well. So, if you've got some cool artwork and a poster, that sort of thing, go to your local pubs or other locations, wherever you're going to find the right fit for the audience for your event. And let them know about it as well, and invite people in that way, see if you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's an important part, and you'll hear me harp on this throughout the rest of the 6-week class, that it's important to find maybe a subset or a group of the wider craft beer audience that you really connect with, right? So Hopworks does a lot of work with beer and bikes, and so one of the paid advertisements is for Bike Portland, and that is a good fit. It makes sense. It's something that Hopworks supports a lot, and there's just going to be a natural fit between those two things.
Yeah, when we street team for the Handmade Bike and Beer Festival, and before that, Bike to Beer Fest, we basically sent one street team out to put posters up in pubs, and the other street team went out and put posters up in all the bike shops. And so, yeah, it's like find that audience for the people who care. When we have our festival, we do paid advertising, on bikeportland.org, or in outdoor Northwest sort of thing, because we know those people are going to be a little more tuned in, care a little bit more about bikes, and maybe wanting to check out a cool display of handmade bikes and while enjoying their beer.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So know your audience. And that really extends across the whole gamut.
That's a safe
right?
bet period. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way you can really save a lot of money in terms of you don't want to go shotgunning your marketing efforts out to people who are never going to connect with you.
Right.
Know your local publications, know your local media outlets, know your local blogs, and really have a good understanding of your company and where you fit in to which blogs. Try and find people who are reading those blogs that are like you, that they're the ones that you're targeting to purchase your product, and really have that's where you want to make your initial it's the low-hanging fruit, right? You don't have to sell yourself too hard to people who are already interested in what you're doing.
So a question there, Bruce, about budget. How do you set it with a percentage of projected revenue? Some other, throw a dart at a dartboard. How do you set a marketing budget?
It's a really interesting question, and I think from year to year, based on our needs, that that percentage definitely changes. I think as a startup, I think you often are you're just there's so many needs and so many demands. I think that sometimes your marketing efforts can get a little neglected. That if you need a stainless steel tank, right? Maybe you're going to go a little cheap on your website, because your website can't produce, beer.
You're not selling website, you're selling beer, yeah.
So I think as we mature as a company, I think we're dialing in, locking in those budgets. Do we currently use a specific percentage of projected revenue? No, we're really looking at sort of year over year needs, and basically saying, okay, well, last year's budget was X, so if we're so this year let's go X plus 10%, that sort of thing, and sort of keep that marketing budget growth kind of consistent with company revenue growth.
Sure.
But when you're looking at something like eventually you're going to need to refresh your website, and they are not cheap right now. Sometimes that spend's going to be a little bit higher, and there's no getting around it, and you definitely you can't just completely go into a shell when you need to have a little fiscal austerity. You just have to be, I think, again, a little more creative, make those dollars go farther. I constantly, when I'm looking at sponsorships for events especially, but also when I'm looking at paid marketing opportunities, I want to know, basically like how many impressions per dollar am I getting, on those opportunities, how many people are going to be at this event, or, how many, what's your your reach and that sort of thing. So
Sure.
It all is important, but, I think that, if you were looking to sort of build a pro forma for your startup in terms of like, what you're looking at, I believe industry standard can be anywhere from 5 to 10%. But, there's no industry standard in terms of like what you put into that bucket as well, right? If you have a company that, let's say it's built around, you've got like a motorcycle themed distillery, right? And you build this really cool motorcycle that is like company branded, that you take to shows. Like, is that a marketing expense, per se? What, where does that, fall into those things versus like, or is it just advertising? So it really depends a lot in terms of like what you put into that marketing budget.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and if you're a small brew pub, buying just a couple of banners like this can tick you up to 15% just like that. Those things are expensive. Yeah,
this banner is probably about $250 to $350. So vinyl printing is not cheap. So
cool. So it's 7 o'clock according to my my clock here. Thanks for all the great questions. Any last thoughts, Bruce, before we sign things out?
No, I think, like I said, if there's one thing, a bit of advice I could give, man, it's like quality, quality, quality. I can't say enough about, word of mouth and like having a quality product before you ever get out into the market. Because if you do go out into the market, you might be able to tweak your labeling, you might be able to tweak, your messaging. But oftentimes, if somebody gets, this can and it doesn't taste great, you may never get a second chance at that consumer.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, make sure whatever it is that you're making out there, and dial it in. Really be proud of what you're doing and making sure it's the best you can do.
Super.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Bruce. This was great.
Yeah.
Don't forget Craft Brew Conference is in Portland for those of you that are here or can be here in a couple of weeks. I know Hopworks is going to be throwing some awesome events, and the Craft Brew Business of Craft Brewing Certificate Program is also going to have a booth. So stop in and say hi if you come into town. And thanks so much, Bruce, for your time.
Yeah, check out the CBC website. They've got a list of events if you are in town. There's a lot of stuff happening in town for a lot of cool stuff. You'll see a lot of breweries from around the country and what they're doing. So definitely check it out.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool, man.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Fun stuff.